Hey everybody, it's time for another USS Iowa Veterans Association interview, and today I have Mr. Scott Bailey, who I remember as the very first, I guess you'd call it food service officer, is that what the title was? S2 Division Officer at the commissioning in 1984. I met Mr. Bailey early on, probably late 83 when I showed up at Pascagoula, and we were living in the barracks and we were eating in I guess you would call it a galley that was set up right next to the barracks at the time. And when I was thinking about who I wanted to interview, I was always fascinated by the whole process of how S2 Division got started. So today we're gonna get after him and get some answers to these hard-hitting questions. But first of all, Mr. Bailey, or Scott, I should say, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. All things considered. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. We're in a pandemic, but that's all right. We're getting through this. Now, just quickly, I just want to make sure people, because maybe not everybody knows who you are. You joined the Navy, what, in 82, 83?
Joined the Navy in October of 82.
82, okay. And then you stayed how many years total in the Navy, active?
A little over 30.
30 years. And you retired as a?
Captain.
Captain, congratulations. That's awesome. I remember a young junior officer ensign reporting aboard, and you had some nicknames, which we will discuss a little bit later on in the conversation. I remember you as a great officer, both in S2 Division and S3 Division. I don't know after that because I left. I did a 2-year recall from the reserve, so I left in July of 85. And I believe you were the chipster officer still in July of 85.
I was just shifting over. That was about the time that then Commander Quigley was leaving and Commander Frank Kalis was coming in.
Yes. So I'm going to got some questions here, about 15 questions I wanted to ask you, and then we'll breeze through this and get some answers out of you, because I'm really curious about a few things pertaining to Pascagoula, and that's going to be our emphasis, is Pascagoula up into the commissioning and then a little bit after the commissioning. The first question is, where were you when you found out that you were assigned to the Iowa? Did you apply for the Iowa, or did you get assigned to Iowa? What was that process like?
I joined the Navy when Reagan announced that he was bringing the battleships back because I wanted the opportunity to serve on one of them. And my recruiter, God bless him, said, should be no problem at all, because recruiters lie, of course, always. And well, I joined the Navy, went through OCS, and supply officers don't get their orders at OCS as line officers do. You get it at Athens, Supply Corps School, once, and now Newport, Rhode Island, because Supply Corps Schools moved. But I found out, I spent 6 months in Athens. A good portion of that time, I made everyone very clear that I wanted a battleship. And I even had battleship models on my desk in our classroom. And there was no question. Billet list came out. There was a battleship on it. It was Iowa. I thought it'd be New Jersey. It was Iowa. And I wanted it. The orders then went to the dispersing officer at Athens rather than to one of the students at Athens. Medically, he couldn't go. And so I didn't know. Orders reading, I thought I was going to go to Surfland as an extra to wait for somebody who screwed up, and then you go out and you try to fix what they did. And I didn't know. I was sitting there in the audience. My orders were the last to be read. And the detailer who was reading the orders, I didn't even hear my name because he didn't say it. He said, Ensign B.B. Bailey. And I was kind of bummed because I didn't want to go to Surfland. And then he said it again. And my friend next to me says, hey, that's you, stupid. And so I stood up, and that's when I found out. And much to my surprise that I was being assigned to Iowa. The billet was food service, so you knew.
Oh, it was.
As soon as you got the orders, you knew you were going to food service.
Oh, that's interesting. I always thought that you would show up the ship, and then the SUPO, the supply officer, who was Commander Quigley at the time, made the assignment. So the billet was for food service officer.
Billet was for food service.
And when was this in time frame?
Time frame, orders reading was in late June or early July of 1983.
Yeah.
And Quigley came through Athens on his way to the ship for a refresher course in certain things. And that's when I first met Bob Quigley.
Interesting. I did not know that. And so then I'm going to beat off base here. So that means all the division officers for the supply department on the Iowa were all billet acquired, so people got those bills. So Mr. Roth got the ship store officer billet when he first reported aboard.
Yeah, when he came aboard, he knew that his was going to be sales officer. Quigley could have changed it. The only one you cannot change is dispersing officer.
Okay.
You have to have orders because that involves the treasury, and you've got to have orders into dispersing, which we had an issue with the dispersing officer, and I ended up taking dispersing for a period of time and did the first cash payday. And I had to get orders to ordering me into dispersing and ordering me to start the dispersing station symbol number.
Like a TAD kind of thing?
No, it was a set of orders. I was still food service. It was the XO. The XO ended up with an issue, and the dispersing officer that we had coming in didn't join the commission ship. And the XO told Quigley he wanted me to take it, which the XO and I had we had a very good working relationship.
Yeah.
He took large chunks out of my rear end on a regular basis, but it was never personal. And so I ended up being,
did that a lot.
Yes, he did. But we did that, for a time, for a number of months, I was food service and dispersing.
Wow. I kind of remember a little bit about the dispersing situation, but I forgot that. And now that you said that, just quickly, was that payday on the mess decks?
The payday was on the mess decks, but we were still feeding in the galley.
Right.
Offshore. And so it was kind of a crazy, yes. What would happen is you'd be given a check, very inefficient.
Right.
Then you walk out to the mess decks with your check.
And you cashed it.
And you cashed it with one of several cashiers out there.
Wow, that's crazy. The good old days. I remember that. Like you get that check and it's like, okay, this is nice, but I want the money.
Yes.
Now it's all direct deposit, but that's how they
deposit, ATMs aboard and all kinds of interesting.
Yeah. I do remember that. And now they said I do kind of remember you being, I think that you were on the mess decks with the cash.
We each had, I was the dispersing officer, but we each had our cash. And then each agent cashier had to balance out. So you better be able to account for either cash or the check amount when you come back to the dispersing office.
But I remember, were you on the mess decks giving out the cash? Because I kind of have a memory of you on the mess decks. Yeah, I do remember that now. And I remember like, what the hell are you doing here? Where's my Battle Bailey burger at?
That's right.
Okay, well, so you just answered the next question about how you got assigned and also when you arrived. You arrived in probably the summer of '83, right?
August of '83.
August of '83. And did you go through Norfolk, Virginia first, or did you go directly to the ship?
No, I went to Norfolk first. The XO was running the PCU up there.
Yes.
And Captain Janecko had the ship down in Pascagoula.
Right.
I arrived in Norfolk, went through all the things, the firefighting school and all those things you were supposed to go to. The XO called me in. He said, the captain wants you down in Pascagoula. He wants to get the galley opened as soon as possible. And what was happening was they were shipping people, they were busing people across town to the Lakeside facility over on Chicago Road. And the crew was very much involved in the reactivation of the ship. They worked long hours.
Right.
And it was taking too long to bus these people over. You were losing an hour and a half for each meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So he wanted to start the galley, and they had that shore galley at Ingalls on the old side, the old bank. And we cleaned the rats out from under the coppers in that galley and scrubbed it out. And what they did when I got there, Senior Chief Simonson, who was one of my first food service instructors at Athens, he came to me when I got the orders. He said, "Hey, I'm going to try to shoot for the LCPO in food service. Do you have a problem with that?" I thought, well, if my food service instructor comes along, it's sort of like a crutch, I guess. If I screw the records up, it's his fault, not mine. And so he came, but he had to remain in Athens. He put together a 6-week cycle menu. And then from that, when you know what you're going to serve for the next 6 weeks, you know how much
food
of what to buy. We had to be very careful because we had no real storerooms.
Right.
The refrigerator and the freezer were 40-foot vans that were brought in, refrigerated vans.
Mm,
And so that's how we got started. I ended
I
up
can't remember that. Yeah.
the records keeper and the Jack of the Dust. And
Yeah. Now that you said this, I always thought I ate at that galley next to the barracks the entire time. But now that you said that, I do remember getting on a bus to go to Lakeside. I do
yep,
recall that. I remember there were some torrential downpours a couple times, and we'd be standing in the barrack with the run as fast as we can to get to the bus because we'd go get breakfast.
yep.
That's fast. I forgot all about that now that you brought that up there. So, okay, so so you got sent out. By the way, I had that same conversation. Went to barber school in Norfolk, and I remember I got done and I was trying out for the football team at the Norfolk base, the USS Iowa football team. And the day I made the team, they made the announcement who made the team. I was like, oh yes, I made it. I was going to be a defensive back. And somebody came up to me and said, hey, the XO wants to see you. I go, what? Being an E4, being called the XO was a little bit different than probably even for an instant, it was probably like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember going in there thinking, what did I do wrong? Did I screw up? Did I fail barber school? What's going on? And I walked in, same conversation was, got a phone call from the CO. The guys are tired of going into town to get paid for haircuts. So he wants you to go down there and start up the barber shop because the crew needs a barber. And I go, oh, okay. And then the following week, I drove down and worked on a barge right next to the ship. The barber shop wasn't open. Eventually, we opened up a room in the barracks. I think we had a room in the barracks that we did the barber shop. So I recall that. Those early days in the barracks when it was like 50 people were really good times. I remember there was a YN row. Him and I used to go pick up the mail. That was another one of my collateral duties, was helping row with the mail. And we'd get these big movie canisters, reel to reel. And we used to have movie night upstairs in that room upstairs on the barracks. And I remember like whoever had duty, so like every fourth day or every sixth day, whatever duty section was, my responsibility was to run some, Smoking the Bandit type thing, in the old projector upstairs. And there was always like 20, 30 people because, people had duty. So those were some good times. Let's see. So you answered that question. So you arrived in August. Did you start prepping to get that thing open right away? I mean, how soon did you open that building?
Well, I had to work on getting cooks. There were no cooks that had been ordered in because the galley wasn't on the ship, was nowhere near ready.
Nowhere near, right.
So we had to get cooks. I ended up with 2 MS3s that we could nab that were destined to us anyway. Didn't know them. There was MS3 Solder and MS3 Valentine, who were, to be quite frank, a godsend. They really rose to the occasion. And then the ship gave me 10 mess cooks. And those 10, I can remember a few of them. I mean, I remember one kid, Jerry Nellis, who was a really good worker, really good guy.
Yeah.
There was a young guy from Louisiana. And I don't remember his name. I remember I always called him the Raging Cajun.
But
I
put a picture up there in case it gives you.
That's in the old galley. The galley. Then we had and Vic Moon. Jerry Nellis is the kid way on the far right in his white hat.
Yep.
But we had Vic Moon there, who later joined the supply department as a storekeeper. And last time I saw him, I believe he was a senior chief down in.
No way.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, lots of very familiar faces in that crowd. That's a great picture.
Well, I brought us some pictures from the early days of the barracks, and I'm guessing that this was probably. I mean, what time did your cook start in the morning? So this is like a muster. I'm guessing this is a muster.
Yes.
Yeah. What time did you guys get going in the morning?
We had breakfast started at 6.
Wow.
So the cooks would be in there at 5. We'd have everything broken out from the day before, and ready to go. And breakfast is a fairly easy meal generally, especially there. I mean, it was eggs to order, pancakes, that sort of thing. But we were on a budget, so I had to be very careful about what I broke out, because you can't close out the quarter in the red, and you've got so much money. At that time, it was about $3.85 per person. per day to feed them 3 meals a day.
You're kidding.
Oh no, yeah, it's still not a lot today even.
Mm,
But yeah, it's so you had to be very careful. Everybody was on Comrats,
right. Okay.
and so I had to go to the bank daily because we had no
Mm.
dispersing officer. I had to go to the bank daily to make sure that we had change, and some joker would always come in to pay their 75-cent breakfast tab with a $20 bill
Yeah.
and wipe out your change account. But that was how we started. We start very early and then work very late into the evening cleaning up, and then I did the records after everybody else left and the place was quiet.
Was your chief there at that time, or was it still no? Okay.
No.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm just and I do remember those trailers for your refrigerated goods. So who did you make the menu then?
No, Simonson made the menu. But when
The MS3?
no MSCS.
So he was there.
No, he was not there. He made the menu in Athens and sent it to me.
You're kidding.
And then we ordered off that menu. All the stuff came through Naval Supply Center, Pensacola, and that's how we got started with those.
You're kidding. I had no idea.
It was crazy.
He was doing double duty then.
So he was.
When did he finally show up?
He showed up that fall.
Okay.
I think it was before Christmas. Don't think it was after. I'm trying to remember when he reported aboard. But
yeah, but those early days, though, the really early days, like September, October, there wasn't a whole lot of people. There was only like 50 to 75 people, but it was like around Christmas time, I think things changed and really people started flowing in quickly.
We ended up, when you're talking by October, we were up about 200, 250 people.
Really? That many, that fast? Okay.
Yeah. And then it just continued to rise.
Right.
And it was escalating. And of course, the commissioning date was accelerated.
Yes. And we're going to talk about that. Yeah.
Crew members had to come in faster.
Yeah.
And so lugging them over to Lakeside wasn't going to work.
Right. Well, you kind of got into the next question. The next question I had was, what type of budget did you have and how did you receive food and liquid? So how did you order food? Was it handwritten, or it wasn't computers? But I mean, how did you get to I want so much burger? How did you do that?
You'd handwrite old 1250s.
Really? Then who'd you turn those into? Did you mail them in or fax them?
Into Supply Center, Pensacola. We drove over to Pensacola, drop off the order.
You drove?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
God.
Email was yet to be introduced.
Oh my God! I thought, I in my mind, I'm thinking, how did you get that form to? Because I remember like in S3 you had like the Journal of Receipts, Journal of Expenditures. It was form 464s. It was always forms. But for us, it seemed like a lot of stuff stayed in the records in the office. But for you, you had to ship out things, and you're ordering from a supply venue. I mean, you're ordering from the Navy, right?
Yes. That's why you could use a 1250, because everything we ordered had a stock number.
And then where would the food arrive from? Would it come from Pensacola?
It'd come from Pensacola.
And did you have a daily arrival of food?
No.
Oh.
We loaded up so that I only had to order food maybe twice between when we opened the galley and when we opened the big galley on the ship.
Okay.
And that was, when the big galley on the ship opened, we had, I want to say we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 18 semis arriving with fresh, frozen, and dry stores.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the second part of this thing here. But you had limited space at what did you call that? Was it just the galley? Did you have a building number for that?
No, they just called it the shore galley.
Shore galley, okay. So you had limited space as far as food and your milk. And I mean, how did you store your milk and your eggs? Was it all in those freezers?
Yeah, it was all there was a refrigerated truck and a frozen truck. And then there was a small refrigerator and small freezer in the galley itself that we would do breakouts into, and I could pull off of that as I needed.
Wow, that's an amazing that the crew that you had, and do you recall like how many days we ate out of that? Do you remember what was the first day that we ate at the galley?
I don't remember the first day.
Was
we
it
ate.
September? Was it September?
Yeah,
Or
it was late September.
okay,
We had, as a matter of fact, it was shortly after we opened that we had Vice Admiral Briggs come down,
right,
who was Surflant at the time.
right.
And he ate in the galley. And I can remember one of the mess cooks, when he came through, the two choices, and I don't know how we did this on the cycle menu, but the two choices for lunch were hot dogs or liver.
Oh no, that was the
And
option that day?
that was the option that day. And Vice Admiral Briggs said, well, I'll have both. And the mess cook told him, because he'd been told we were on such a budget, you got to have one or the other, sir. and the captain said, he can have both if he wants it. And to his credit, Vice Admiral Briggs said, no, those are the rules.
But kudos to the mess cook because he knew the rules and stuck to the rules. And if I'm the
Yeah.
admiral, I say, you're a good sailor, but I still want both.
And like a good sailor also, he told him, he says, you can come back for seconds if you finish. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember those early days, and I can't remember having any complaints about the meals. And now a couple of things here. You had some special meals right off the bat. Well, I don't want to say right off the bat, but I remember, and I'm going to pop up this picture. I remember that the Christmas meal dinner was pretty special. And because you can look at this picture, you got Christmas tree, you decorated the galley. Do you recall anything about prepping for the big Thanksgiving and Christmas meals?
oh yeah, both. In fact, we came up with the paper menus, so everybody could see that, because that was always tradition on the ship.
Right.
And that's Valentine standing right there.
Yeah.
And they were a big deal, because of course we were roasting turkeys. We weren't doing turkey roll or anything like that.
Yeah.
Senior Chief Simonson couldn't stand turkey roll, and I applaud him for that. But
Yeah.
they were very special. And the crew, the enlisted, when they came through, they were so grateful to have a meal there rather than being shipped across town.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that too.
Wonderful to us and the cooks. And the cooks were really working hard. So it was very nice to see that the crew was appreciative.
Oh, we are very appreciative. And I'm looking at the meal. I can see pumpkin pie there.
Yes. Yes.
And I can see pumpkin pie, and it looks like cranberry there next to the pumpkin pie, and that first seat to the right there. So you guys went all out. And I see a lot of decorations there too, which is really nice.
I should have dug it out. I still have the menus, the printed paper menus from 1983. So
you need to scan those and share those with people. Well, as we progressed along and more cooks start showing up there and more crew members kept showing up there, the meals started getting bigger. I'm guessing meal hours got longer. Did you just have 3 meal hours, or did you ever, at that galley next to the barracks, did you ever have mid-rats there, or was it just those 3 meals?
No, just the 3 meals. We didn't have mid-rats.
Right.
And as it was, I mean, there were some interesting things that happened, because we would be there late into the evening.
Yeah.
We started doing night baking in that thing. So
Okay.
you could have things like pumpkin pie. We did not have the money to buy a lot of baked goods from town. That's a much more expensive route than to have it made on the ship.
Yeah. Did everybody work one shift, or did you split them in half and work 2 shifts? You must have had 2 shifts.
No, we had one shift. The crew was working 12, 16 hours a day.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
So we had one shift, and there wasn't much in the way of days off, I can tell you, because the galley operates 7 days a week. So
yeah. Well, thank God. So do you recall how the mess cooks, did they just show up? How did you request them, or did you just tell Supple, like, hey, we need more people, and then he just took care of it, or how did that work out?
No, Commander quickly knew that we needed mess cooks, and so did the XO. And so the XO just took the reins and said, okay, this is how we're going to divide it up. Yeah. They knew how many people were in each department. And so he divided it up so that the 10 came, sort of equal paying out of all the departments.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember. I mean, I was at E4 at the time, so I didn't mess cook there, but I do remember mess cooking when I was on the Constellation. Now, you had a lot of great cooks, and I don't remember all of them. Valentine was one. One that was dear to me was, I became good friends with him, was, I believe, MS2 De Palma,
Yes.
who I remember later on as being a great baker. I remember him working the bakery because where my sleeping quarters was to go to breakfast in the morning, I would always go by where he baked. And if you want to smell something good, maybe that's why Master Chief Scott had his office down by the bakery.
De Palma was extraordinary. I
Yeah.
mean, the consummate New Yorker. He was a cop out of New York.
Mm.
Came back out of the reserves. He'd been
So
in the
he was
Navy.
reserve. Yeah, he was reserve too.
Yeah, he was. Taught me a lot about baking. I used to go in there at night when he was baking and
Yeah.
taught me all kinds of things. Yeah, we used to bake chocolate chip cookies from time to time because the crew loved chocolate chip cookies.
Mm.
And when you make them for a crew of 1,500, you make them 15,000 at a time. And if we had put all 15,000 out at lunch, that crew would have scarfed them all down at 10 cookies per person. So DP was great. He taught me some of the secrets I still keep.
Yeah.
The secret to his pecan pie I will always use but never reveal. He told me.
I tell you what, we really had a great bunch of cooks, and I remember all the meals were good. I mean, it's been a long time, but I don't ever remember having a bad meal, and it seemed like everything was in order. Like you went through there. If I remember, you get your food. You had the drink machine right there. Then you walk through the hatch, and you had the salad bar and like your Kool-Aid and sodas and all that kind of stuff. Probably my only thing I really didn't like was the table situation. It seemed like tight. There were tight seats. But that might be because I'm bigger than I used to be. And the last time I was like, these seats are tight.
They were typical McDonald's style seating.
Yes. Yes.
It has its pluses and its minuses.
Yeah.
Especially when the mess decks was also the crew's lounge.
Yes.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
You want more comfortable seating than that.
Watching movies, playing cards, reading books,
Right.
those kind of things. Yes, I have a lot of great memories of doing things down there in the late evenings. Well, so let's move on to the ship then. Originally, we were scheduled to remain in the barracks for quite a while. Like when I got my orders, they said, you're never going to see sea time. You're going to be in Mississippi the whole time. It's going to be 2 years down there. But because of world events, the commissioning ceremony was expedited. Do you recall having that conversation with the supple, I'm guessing, and about getting, hey, we got to get going here. The ship's going to be commissioned in April versus next year sometime. Do you remember that conversation? And what was that like? Like, hey, we got to go.
I remember that the date changed twice.
Oh.
Because it had been extended out. It originally was out, I want to say that it was in 85 sometime, and then it bumped back to later 84, and then it bumped it back to April of 84. But that's the way I remember it.
I remember they said 85 to me. That's what they said was 85.
And so, yeah, that the key for that was getting the ship ready, and again, the ship's crew did a lot of the work. Both, my folks in the galley, DP getting everything ready. De Palma was he knew his way around the shipyard.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to get things done in a very old-fashioned Navy way that would probably send us all to jail these days. But that he was able to get a lot of things done. We were able to get stainless steel deck grating in.
Yeah.
And other things that weren't slated for us. So yeah, but we worked very hard and very long hours. But overall, it was a pleasure to leave Pascagoula under our power.
Yes. Well, kind of speaking of that, the next question I have here is, once you got the word that we're going to be getting commissioned in 84, and the ship's crew was, I want to say, in my memory, we moved on board around February, I think, of 84. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But do you remember about when that first meal? Well, first of all, what were some of the challenges of going from the barracks and going onto the ship? Do you remember some challenges?
Well, there were a couple of things. One, Ingalls Shipyard had turned over a pretty lousy piece of real estate for us to use, and we left it in really, really good condition. But they go through, and their way is to make money on the government. So one of the things was getting them to accept the galley back, and they were very critical about what the galley looked like. It's like, well, it doesn't have the rats in the galley any longer, so that's a plus. but the biggest challenge were the, you know, the 18 or so semis that were coming in one day. And that day, actually the day before that, the reefer plant went down.
Oh no.
And we rushed around and tried to find, and we did find refrigerated warehouses in Pascagoula where those vehicles could remain. And they stayed in there overnight. And Lieutenant Commander Ernest, the Chang, got the reefer plants going again. And of course, it was then cross your fingers and you're hoping that this 41-year-old refrigerator is going to hold, and it did. But that was a big deal. All the new equipment was a challenge. When we got underway the first time, they put convection ovens in the battleship, which are fine. They're great to cook with, but convection has a fan in it. It's a little electric fan that keeps the air circulating. And unfortunately, when you fire 16-inch guns, you blow all of these fans out. So we went through
something they didn't think about.
Yeah, that's right. So we went through several iterations of fans before we found some kind of russified fan that would fit in the Hobart oven and would work.
Yeah.
But there were unique things like that.
Do you recall? Okay, so was the first meal a breakfast or was the first meal a dinner?
First meal was a breakfast.
The breakfast. And do you remember, like, when that first meal was done? And I'm guessing you were probably on the galley the entire 2 hours, like, okay, please work out, please work out. Hope everyone's happy. Do you remember what the relief was like, getting the feedback from the crew and from the cooks, like, we did it?
The crew loved it because, again, that was another plus. It was a reasonable walk from the ship to the short galley.
Yeah.
So now they got up and, they could stumble down the passageway on the second deck and they were there.
Right.
So again, they liked that. The cooks put on the dog as much as they could. They enjoyed providing the service out of our galley, not out of somebody else's. And there was a lot of pride, not so much relief. I knew that these kids could do anything. It was just the pride of having completed it. So you take a deep breath, give yourself a high five, and oh, by the way, get ready for lunch.
Yeah, get ready for lunch. Well, I mean, I've been on an aircraft carrier and they have 2 galleys. I mean, it's huge. I never really thought that your galley was a lot of space. It seemed to me. I mean, you had the main part, which was the 2 serving lines on each side. Was one side a fast line like burgers and hot dogs? Okay, that's what I kind of thought. And then you had, I guess it would be forward of that is you had like food prep and the bakery was off to the side a little bit, I guess. But you had some other areas that you could to prepare. I remember you had the big things for, I guess, soup or whatever that you guys would make in those things.
Yeah, the big coppers. The coppers went around the turret, the bar deck.
Yeah.
The big shop was just forward. You had the bakery annex that was forward and on the port side. Port side was the speed line. Yeah. And then they had this General Motors of donut making machines in the bakery annex.
Yes.
The bakery itself, we had one piece of original equipment. It was the mixer, which was this huge thing. It looked like a concrete mixer. It was enormous. And it was a whole
big,
great big thing.
Yeah.
And it turned, like a cement truck. That thing was amazing. You could grind rocks in that, I swear. And they had some modern pieces of equipment. I can remember quickly walking into the bakery one day and tripping on these little studs that came out of the deck. And he looked at De Palma, and I'm standing there. He says, "What was here?" And De Palma said, "The dough rolling machine. It was for making pies and rolling out the dough."
Right.
And he hated that. He would never use it because it would make the dough tough in a pie. And so quickly said, "Well, where is it?" And he wasn't happy when he found out De Palma had thrown it over the side. That wasn't the appropriate way to survey a piece of equipment.
No, not by legal standards. That's not the right way. On those first couple days, do you recall, like, was there anything that got forgotten? Like, oh crap, forgot salt or something. Was there anything that got missed that you had everything all prepped and like, oh crap, we forgot this, or was everything perfect?
as far as ordering the stuff, I mean, I had 6 chiefs, with
Yeah.
the senior chief and chief. Heaven knows I had enough eyes looking on this stuff. And then I had some wonderful first classes. The records keeper was MS1 Zizniewski. He knew his stuff.
Hmm.
And DP with the bake shop, DP knew exactly what he was doing.
Right.
Oh my, there's a blast from the past.
Yeah, there's the galley and serving food from the inside.
Yes.
And I'm guessing this is the main line, it looks like to me, which is where I always pretty much did. The main line was over by the ship store office, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That was starboard side. On the port side, MS1 Epps, who was a super guy as well,
Mhm.
he surprised me one day and had the shipyard make a sign. And that was where you mentioned earlier. He had a type, he didn't ask me what I wanted to call, but he had a sign up there called Battle Bailey's Burger Bar.
Yes, yes. And a lot of people still call you that.
Yeah, they do.
I remember that well. And then I'm just kind of remembering, I'm just going to throw a couple of pictures here. I'm guessing this was probably, I don't know exactly if this was your office or somebody's office. This was from the cruise book under S2 Division, but I don't really recognize a whole lot. Is that Simonson in the back?
That is Simonson,
Okay.
and that is just forward of my office. It was the chief's office.
Okay.
We got Chief Seahorn. Oh boy, I'm really stretching my.
Well, it's but these were all the people in your division.
Yeah, they were all they were all mine.
Yeah.
And but that was the office just forward of mine, and that had the breakout room as well. So we had a bunch of dry stores forward of that.
Yeah. I'm looking at the paperwork like, okay, what is this, like menus up here? It's amazing to me the kind of stuff that you have to do to make the galley run. It's amazing to me. And there's so much planning and preparation because, it's like almost all the supply divisions provide a service, whether it's dispersing or ship store or whatever. And you are more so than probably any other department. People can write complaints about you. The food sucks. The barber gave me a bad haircut. My shirt came back pink. My candy bar was stale. So you really got to be on your A game.
You do, and it's false economy. Sometimes I would run into people over the course of my 30 years that would think, well, I'll forego doing that for the supply department and use that money to buy another whatever for the engineering department or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's false economy because you're not buying it for the supply department. You're buying it for the supply department to provide a service of some type or another to the ship as a whole. So if you are cutting corners in supply, you're cheating the crew out of the best service that you can provide them, whether it's laundry or ship store or dispersing, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. We have a few questions left here to go. I have one question here. So once you had your entire division, first of all, how many people were assigned to S2 Division? Do you remember the number? A roundabout number?
Yeah, I had about 60 cooks.
Really?
And we had 90 mess cooks.
Wow, I had no idea there was that many.
About 150 people total.
Wow. And so was it up to your chiefs? Was it Simonson or who made the menu and who approved the menu once we were on board ship?
Simonson would make the menu.
Okay.
And in theory, I would recommend approval and the XO would approve.
So it was the XO. So SUPO was not involved.
SUPO looked at it on the way up.
Yeah. And so when you turned the menu in, and the XO saw and read it, that wasn't for the next day, right? That was like for the following week or something. It was down the road.
Again, we would always operate on cycle menus, and we generally operated on a 6-week cycle menu. So we'd go 6 weeks, and then it would repeat again.
Right.
And you could keep doing that, and then you'd make adjustments and say, okay, we're deployed. I can't get these things, so I'm making the following adjustments to the cycle menu.
Gotcha.
Based on what I can get. Maybe you can only get canned goods. You couldn't get as much fresh, or you couldn't get frozen.
Was the menu a nav sub form?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It was handwritten.
I know. I was going to say for 6 weeks, handwritten for 6 weeks.
Yeah, handwritten for 6 weeks, or you'd write it in there, and then we had a very wide carriage typewriter, and you could put it in and type in what the menu was going to be.
That's crazy, crazy. And you had you always had an evaluator of the dinner or each meal?
Every meal had an officer in the duty section come down to sample the meal.
Right.
And they'd fill out a form that was, complimentary or critical, depending on what it was.
And did that form go to you or did it go to XO?
It went to me, but had to be given to the XO. Again,
Right.
the SUFO saw it on the way up, but the XO would see it.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I remember, and you've been to the ship since we're back. So I don't remember, because they tore out the scullery and some of the other mess, and the ship store is also gone. Now the little Gedok area where they served ice cream or sodas, that's still there. But the scullery and the old ship stores now was all tore up because that's where they sell their merchandise on the
And
ship.
the F-Mestex.
That's what I was going to say. There was Mestex back there too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
When we went aboard, there were racks in the Mestex that folded up. I'm talking beds, racks.
Right.
Folded up. They would trice up during the day, but there you had crew members during World War II in Korea sleeping on the Mestex.
So a quick question, because you just brought up something popped in my head. So this meal here, which was at the building galley in Pascagoula, I noticed there's tray and there's plates. Was that only because it was Christmas, or did you always have plates at that cafe at Pascagoula?
Now, as I recall, we did have plates there. We didn't have the trays yet.
But once we got on the ship, we had trays.
Yeah.
Okay. And the trays, is that something that you ordered through S1 division?
Yes.
Okay.
But the trays would come as part of what was called the GUCL, the General Use Consumables List. Any ship that's commissioned, they have, okay, how many people on the ship, and they provide you with consumables, and trays are consumables.
Silverware, cups, glasses, all those kind of things.
Cooking paraphernalia, all that stuff.
And again, is that something that Simonson would have ordered? Say, hey, we need 3,000 forks, or that was just already pre-done.
That just arrived, and I had a GUCL storeroom that we just dumped all that stuff in, and then we would draw off that as we needed it.
Okay.
And then we would reorder.
Because glasses would break or cups would break. Yeah. Okay. Now, S6 is a completely different version, right?
Yes.
Is that officers and chiefs?
Well, on Iowa, it was S5 because we didn't have the S6. So S5 was officers and chiefs. The Iowa used to have a warrant officers mess, which was second deck forward, just below the wardroom, and it's where all the warrant officers used to eat back in the day.
Right.
And that was turned into a forward ship store for uniforms and things of that nature.
Yes. Okay. I gotcha.
But otherwise, lost my train of thought here.
Well, I just wanted to, because the chief's mess was down by the past the aft galley, but you didn't have anything to do with that.
Oh yeah. We provided the cooks for the chief's mess and the oversight for how things were done. But the chiefs commuted all their rations to their mess, so they ate quite well.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
that's what I was just kind of curious about, is because I've been back there and they had their own little separate galley and everything. I didn't know if that was you guys did the service there or if it was somebody else. So
the wardroom would buy a lot of their stuff from us.
Right. Okay.
But otherwise, no. We were the main stores when it came to the food.
Well, the whole process between. Let me see here. I'm going to go into one last topic, and then I have one more picture I want to share with you. At some point after the commission, so we got commissioning in '84, and because I remember at some point you transferred to S3 division.
Yeah.
Was that just a time rotation, or was that something that quickly wanted to do? How did that come about, and how did you get S3?
Normally, when you have a large ship like that, you rotate the officers through so that they get experience in another area, because when you go to another ship, and you become supply officer, you're going to have all of that under you. So obviously it's better if you've had some experience in it to be able to understand what your junior officer is going through.
Mhm.
So yes, as I mentioned, I was the dispersing officer. I wasn't all that excited about moving out of food service. I enjoyed food service. I
Yeah.
got to see the crew 3 times a day, when they came through, and I, my memory was better then. I knew so many of the names of the guys coming through,
Mhm.
and I liked that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But then he said, no, he wanted me to go to S3 to learn sales.
So that was Quigley's decision to go to S3. And then where did Roth go?
Rolf went up to S5. He went up to the wardroom.
Okay.
And in fact, got to deal with the XO on the wardroom galley stuff. And XO always called him Big Kid.
Lord.
Yeah. So
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but I do remember you taking over S3 division. And I remember I was a storeroom operator first, and then you and Lauderman decided that the way I was told from Lauderman was that there were some issues with the barber shop. They wanted me to come down there and leave the storeroom and kind of manage the crew barber shop, which I did for a while. And then my last few months was up in the officer's barber shop before I transferred out. But I remember I have good memories of the barbershop. Well, honestly, both S2 and S3 had great guys, period. S3 division was great guys, and there were some great barbers down there. And there was a guy by the name of Jose Arroyo. And yeah, and he funny dude. And we had music in there. So I guess it might have been some stereo or a boombox or something, but I remember there being music in there. And Arroyo, we'd have to do 20-minute haircuts, and you have like maybe a 5-10-minute break because you have to sanitize all your equipment and get ready for the next person to come down there. And he would play some music, and he would get maybe some salsa or something, something that he would like. And you kind of do a little dance. And I remember one day I said, do you have a name for that dance? Do you remember what we called it?
No.
It was called let's see if I get it right, Battleship Bailey Backache Break. That's what he called it. Battleship Bailey Backache Break. Because he did a little bit of break dancing and danced to the music, but a lot of good times. And so I got 2 questions here. Was there a major difference between the 2 divisions, or did you kind of was the transition really smooth for you because you'd been in S2?
Well, I mean, we were a close department, period.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
with the number of people that were in supply, we were a close department.
Yeah.
So, I knew all the SHs, and you guys were, right there near us. We would help with each other's inventories because you needed.
Yes, that's right. I remember you coming down and helping inventory the storeroom. I remember that.
Yeah. So it wasn't a difficult transition. The biggest difference between S2 and S3, which isn't a good thing when you're the accountable officer, is in S2 you eat your accountability. And so when you go to inventory,
I know where you're going with this.
If it's not down there, you can write it off as having broken it out and eaten it, and nobody can prove you wrong. Whereas
S3 is a different ballgame.
S3, it's either there or it's not there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
I had a run-in with brass commissioning lighters that I had.
Yes, it's a lot of money. When you start talking about the entertainment stuff, stereos and clothes and emblematic items and things that they're supposed to be a profit, and that profit goes to the MWR fund, right? Isn't that where it goes? Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame when you talk about supply items compared to commercial items, because that when you brought that up, I knew exactly where you were going to go with that one. So
and in S3, we did a big business with mail order, and when you pull into somewhere like New York City,
oh my God,
you sell 40,000 bulk.
Oh, yeah. Where would so quickly, and we're going to kind of go on here. So how did you sell merchandise? So when we pulled in New York City, thousands of New Yorkers came on board. Where did you sell things? Was it on the deck?
We didn't. In theory, we can't sell to the public.
Oh.
So we would turn over material to the PAO, George Farrar. He'd go up with his people and sell on the mess decks. And then he would pay us the retail, the Navy retail, and then he charged a little bit more to cover the cost of putting that stuff up and doing all those.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
And then, so like when you, I mean, I could probably sit here and talk to you for hours. These are so many great questions and answers there. So when you got ready to pull into a port, did you, as an S3 officer, did you like sit down with Dickerson and Lyman, like, okay, how many hats do we need?
Oh yeah. I
How
mean,
many hats do we need?
you had to plan that, well ahead,
Yeah,
because it took so long to get. No, and once you're deployed, forget it. They'd always tell us, Quigley or Kalis or the XO, I want you to have 75,000 ball caps aboard. It's like, oh God, when do we inventory, Lord?
oh Lord.
So but that ship was so popular everywhere it went, even in France, where
Yeah,
anything from World War II in France is very popular.
wow. I can't imagine where like you get a whole bunch of stuff like in August, knowing you have to do inventory in September.
Yep.
And when you do inventory, we're talking inventory. Every bar soap has to be counted.
That's right.
Every pen, every cat, everything in those storerooms had to be counted.
Should be in those storerooms, and I mean, the fragrance in those storerooms.
Oh yes.
From all of the different soaps, the deodorants,
Yeah.
the colognes. It's like, oh my God.
And the last reunion, I went down to that forward storeroom, which was the worst storeroom ever. It was like 6 decks down. I remember going down there and thinking, how the hell did we do this? And I'm thinking, we just had a bunch of guys that did their duty and did their job, and we got it done. But I remember every now and then to be like 6 levels up, and somebody like I can't even think of names, R.T. Smith or somebody, or Brownfield, whatever. Like, whoops, there goes the box of dial soap.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because those things, like just like milk cartons and a lot of things, or like even steaks, those things are heavy because they come in a big box. So I only have 2 more questions here. Actually, quickly, there was always a rumor on the mess decks that whenever we had hot dogs or chili or tomato soup or something, we always knew that steak was right around the corner. So we're getting the cheap meal now, but we know that means in a few days, a week or so, we're going to get that steak dinner. Is that true?
Yeah, well, when you're given $3.75 a day, and you know that you've got a special meal coming up, maybe it's a Thanksgiving meal. That wasn't cheap either because of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, surf and turf was always popular.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Yes, you would try to build up enough reserve,
right,
to spend that money on that big meal.
Yeah.
And I mean, hot dogs appeared anyway because. And
but I mean, it would be something like, okay, we're good with this. It's not the best meal. It's kind of, you knew it's kind of cheap, but we kind of had to figure like, okay, there's a reason for this meal, and that reason is coming soon. And then we pull in and look on you guys had that menu board by the ship store office, the little thing with the little white letters, and we got, because I would go to the ship store office like, oh, steak for dinner tonight. Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yes. Okay, so we kind of covered everything. I just have 2 quick questions. First of all, I really have a lot of great memories of Pascagoula, and anybody that served in Pascagoula was a plank owner has good memories. And things like this happened that don't happen on a ship. And I always wonder, like, how did this happen? What was the planning for this? How did this come about? There are people saying for you being entertainers.
The Pascagoula, interesting as it was as a place to live, the Iowa and New Jersey coming out earlier, it was a spark of patriotism under Reagan. Reagan suddenly made the country feel good about being the country again.
Mm-hmm.
And these battleships represented a proud part of our history. And so there were a lot of people in Pascagoula. The VFW welcomed us down there.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of folks. And I think George Farrar is the one that made the arrangements for some of this stuff, just for these guys to come in, or people to come in. And it was nice that the crew, people appreciated them.
Yeah. I just, on any given day, you go down there and there was, and it wasn't like every day. Obviously, it wasn't every day. But I do remember, like, when the ship was commissioned, you see signs around town, good luck to the BB-61, we're going to miss you guys, all that kind of stuff. And not know.
The one that I remember was Wendy's.
Yeah.
if you've got the beef, we've got the buns, is what the BB-61. That was
Yeah.
what your son.
Yeah, something like that. And I do remember that it was a very welcoming city. And I know a lot of people were sad when the time was up for us to go. But I do have a lot of, and most of the guys that I talked to that served during the Pascagoula days have great memories of that time frame. It was a glimpse of a period between middle of summer to early '84. Those were some good times. So lastly, what do you have a couple of favorite memories that you could share about Pascagoula? Something that you haven't already talked about?
The people, well, first of all, the people, and I got to say again, everybody rose to the occasion. It was challenging, probably with the most rewarding time in my career. It was just
A lot of people say that.
but it was, I mean, I think back on some of these kids, and it's just like, I was told later by another CO, you know, these kids, all of these folks come in, these sailors come in, and somebody's son, today they have daughters, but not back on the aisle. Somebody's son, somebody's nephew, somebody's grandson, somebody's husband. And he said, and it's our responsibility to return them to their families in the same or better condition than they gave them to us. And all of those kids, I remember, I mean, some of the funny times, De Palma we talked about, and one of De Palma's fellow New Yorkers, Francis Southern, who was a scream. Bruce Wetterau, who was a really conscientious kid. I enjoyed getting to know him a bit. You know, we had Hummel, Sauter, Valentine, Malin, the khaki were all good. Although I think if you put 6 chiefs in one room, you're looking for some kind of a fight. But all of them were really, really wonderful. Yeah. And that was one. The other thing was the XO, who ended up being a really, really good mentor for me. And that started out in the Shore Galley. Right. He was driving by one evening. The lights were still on. It was like 11 o'clock at night. He walked in. I was doing the records. I didn't see him come in. And I was in a little closet that served as my office. And I was doing the records. I didn't stand up. I didn't hear him come in. And it was Christmas, December of '83. He kicked my desk because I didn't stand up when he came in my little closet. And the Christmas cards on my desk fell over. And one of them was musical. And the musical Christmas cards in '83 were kind of rare. And so he had he's what the, and he looks at it, picks it up, and it was a picture of a man, a woman, and a baby, and it said on it, it said, Scott, hope you have a great holiday, love, Woz, and Candy. And he looked at me and he said, how do you know Steve Wozniak? It was Steve Wozniak from Apple Computer. And anybody that knows the XO knows he was a huge Apple fan. And so he ended up with a Mac on his desk there. Yeah. That I got for him from Apple at a very good price. Yeah. And, you know, Splycor's motto is never pay retail. So, you know, but that started off this relationship. Yeah. And it was, you know, purely coincidental, and purely because I grew up in Silicon Valley, purely coincidental that I happened to have been an acquaintance of Steve Wozniak, and I had other friends at Apple. I didn't ask Steve to get me that computer. Yeah. That computer, by the way, is sitting on the desk of the Missouri. And
is it really?
Yep, it's there.
Okay, that's right, because he went there next, right?
No, he went to Office of Legislative Affairs, then he went to the Missouri, and I went to NSC Oakland, and I was diverted from a Fig 7 to Long Beach, where the Missouri's headquartered, because they had serious contracting problems. I was a contracting officer, and the biggest complainer was the CO of the USS Missouri. Oh, 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. So I got to spend a lot more time with the XO. We'd go to the Lakers games together. He liked to sail. He invited me down one night. I didn't know why until I got down there and realized Cher was filming a music video.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That the Navy did not know about.
Right. Yeah. And I think some people got in trouble about that later on.
Yeah. You
didn't. We're gonna wrap things up here. Just one last thing. So when did you leave the Iowa?
I left the Iowa at the beginning of May of '86. Okay. Just before the International Naval Review.
Did you finish at S3, or did you go to another division before you left?
Finished at S3.
Finished at S3. Okay. All right. Well, we're hoping, I'm in contact with a lot of guys, as you well know. We're hoping for a really good S3 division turnout here in Orlando in September. A lot of those guys I haven't seen in a long time. Obviously, you and I saw Mr. Roth and also Reggie Moore the last time when we stayed at the Queen Mary. So anytime we can see some of these old shipmates, it's always a good deal. And we'd love to see some of these guys that bring back so many good memories. Well, Scott, thank you so much. This has been a great time listening to your stories. I want to try to do more of these because there's so much information that's out there that we kind of know that we don't know. And I do recall the galley next to the barracks and the galley on ship were some of the best meals I've ever had in the Navy. And it has a lot to do with the officers, the chiefs, and the crew that did it. I had no idea that you had that many cooks assigned. No, so you had mid-rats obviously on the ship, right? Mid-rats?
Yeah, we had mid-rats.
Okay, yeah. And was that kind of a combo meal?
It was generally, yeah, it would have some breakfasty things because that's easy to throw eggs.
Right.
It would have leftover from whatever we had from lunch and dinner that day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, always a good meal, and I can't. Well, I mean, it's been a long time. I don't think I've ever had a bad meal on the island, to be honest with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Again, hey, thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. You hang tight. I'm just going to stop the recording here. Again, thank you for your time, for coming on here and sharing some of your memories of the early days of Pascagoula and getting the galley up and running on the ship. Much appreciation. You take care, okay?
Okay, thanks, John.